And the union always tries to give an informed response because people may view unions as obstructionists or as always combative, but
Mm.
that is not absolutely true. In fact, it's far from the truth. We try to partner with organizations and we want organizations and enterprises to do very well because the better that they do is the stronger our claim for, like, as I said before, improved terms and conditions of employment.
Mm-hmm.
Where you find us, and sometimes it's not a knock against the media fraternity, but you find the media fraternity more interested in issues of conflict, and therefore, where it is the issues where we are partnering and working well with organizations, it doesn't make the media as often as it ought to,
Okay.
and therefore there might evolve from that a skewed perception as to how unions operate.
Mm.
But to go back on point, this particular conversation that the bank raised on the 6th of August was followed up in writing on the 9th of August, where it is they confirmed in writing that they wanted to introduce PCR testing for people who were not vaccinated.
Mm.
And those PCR tests, as far as the union was aware, was costing something like $1,200 per test. And these tests were needed to be done every fortnight. Now, and prior to this, the bank would have been paying the cost for the tests. So we found this to be a bit, sorry, let me be quite candid. It is quite unreasonable to expect a worker uh, who's earning less than $10,000 to be spending that kind of money on a PCR test to come to work, where it is they have a mortgage to pay, rent to pay, children to feed, car bills to pay, all right?
Mm.
All of these other expenses of living, and you can't expect them to foot that bill. And therefore, we found it uh, very much strange that the bank would come up with this type of position, especially when you took it into the context of what existed before. Where it is, I said they were paying for the test.
Okay.
But that really wasn't the issue of the greatest separation between ourselves and the bank on this issue.
Mm.
I would have referred before to Section 40, which says that you have to treat in good faith. Now, treat in good faith uh, is the fundamental platform on which discussions, trust, and confidence is built.
Mm.
I haven't seen as a unionist and as a labor relations practitioner working in banking, insurance, and general workers union. I haven't seen one single dismissal letter where it is a financial institution does not speak to the loss of trust and
Mm-hmm.
confidence.
Okay.
But what employers don't sometimes seem to understand is that trust and confidence, just like in any relationship, goes both ways.
Mm.
The worker is also due trust and confidence in their employer. All right.
Mm-hmm.
And where there's a recognized majority union and the workers vest their interest in that union to represent them, then that employer, in this case Republic Bank, has a legal responsibility to treat with that trade union in
Mm-hmm.
good faith. And we would have met on two occasions, and I said on the 6th of August and then on the 12th of August, sorry, the 17th of August, sorry.
Mm.
And then while having discussions on the 17th of August about the bank's intention to implement a particular type of policy, the bank goes on the 18th of August, the very day after, and announces the policy to staff as a live policy.
Mm.
And then has the audacity to come back to the union. The leader of the bank's team is a Preston George, formerly from Petrotrin, and has the audacity to tell the union, well, the policy is there, but if you can't anything that can dissuade us from effecting the policy, then we will go ahead and we will change it.
All right.
But
So it's
until then,
mhm.
the policy is there. That
So
is
it was
not
a
good faith.
unilateral decision.
That is not good faith. It was an absolutely unilateral decision that broke the provisions of Section 40,
Okay.
thereby exposing the banks and industrial relations offense.
Well, I know that I did see in the press release as well that you're saying that that the union, BIGWU that is preparing for maybe a possible legal challenge.
Well,
Am I
we're more
correct?
than prepared.
Yeah.
We have already initiated. We would have issued a trade dispute. We had raised a trade dispute a few days ago
Okay.
to the Ministry of Labor. Ministry of Labor would have responded quite quickly. We have that ventilation of the trade dispute tomorrow at 2 p.m. on Wednesday. And at that point in time, the bank will have another opportunity to hear what the union has to say and to give consideration to what the union has to say.
All right.
And we're hopeful that the bank will retreat and withdraw its proposal, and the dispute can be settled there. If not, the matter then goes to the industrial court.
There's so much, that we have to discuss here, and as I mentioned, Mr. Brown, we had earlier on some discussion also with your Secretary General, and he expressed certain views as well, talking about improving the industrial relations climate in Trinidad and Tobago. How can we deepen that social dialogue and improve on the collective agreement process in what I would call a tripartite system? When there are so many moving parts with specific sectorial interests, is there any right formula?
It takes will, it takes maturity to rise above your personal objective. Personal meaning what it is, it's the union's objective or the company's objective. I'll have you know that Barbados doesn't depend on legislation. It depends on social compacts, and there are agreements that work in Barbados. And as you would have seen in terms of how it is they settle differences and disputes as a society is quite mature. They don't descend into violence. And you would have heard something from the Prime Minister of Barbados, because it was very popular in social media, and it fell and it was embraced by the hearts and minds of persons here. But that is the context in which a mature society deals with something. If it is you want to be less than selfless, and you want to put personal interests or corporate interests, right, before the wider interests of the community, then that is what happens.
Okay.
And then you have what it is you have now, where the Ministry of Labor is flooded with cases, and the industrial court is flooded with cases with simple disputes.
Right.
Simple in the context of persons should know their elementary departures in industrialization.
Okay.
That the court has to, and sometimes the court, you in front of the court, and they will tell you that they're sad to hear these things coming before them.
All right. And you're listening to and viewing the Citizens Community Forum. I'm Stephen Cummings. I have with me Mr. Jason Brown, second Vice President of the Banking and Insurance General Workers Union. Our topic this evening, job security, employer-worker relations now and post-pandemic. Mr. Brown, we're looking at, this issue of, treating with that relationship, between employer and worker. And you hinted there that apparently, and you talked about, some simple matters, which I suppose can be resolved, out of court and just between an employer and worker and the union and that sort of tripartite system over the table. Sometimes simple matters end up in the courts. Do you believe that there is now a need for maybe greater levels of employee education? And we can cite many areas, for example, areas such as oral, written contracts, duration of contracts, and we have this issue now of temporary, contracts, even within the public service.
Well, Mr. Cummings, I would not support, or I would not agree with the statement that what is required is greater education. In fact, what I am sad to report is that the education and the knowledge of the system is so great that it is being used, rather than to expedite cases to get resolution one way or the other, it's being used to hinder the process. You have companies all across the length and breadth of this country who, for whatever reason, it could be status, it could be other things, you attach to their title the nomenclature of president or the nomenclature of manager. But these people are not decision makers in your company. Citibank, for example, if you go into Citibank and you look at the doors, everybody's a vice president this and a vice president that. Okay? But they are not decision makers.
I see.
Not because your name has a particular nomenclature, your title, I mean your classification. It means you're a decision maker. And these companies know that. And that is why I would say it is not the education that is lacking. The consultants, for the most part, well versed in industrial relations law. The industrial court now is being penetrated a lot by attorneys, and the attorneys are practicing there. It's a lucrative business for them, right? The companies are hiring them to defend cases, and the trade unionists they have always been there since 1972 and the Industrial Relations Act, and we have been plying our trade, trying to protect workers' rights and interests there as well. And the level of competence, I say that generally that you see in at bilateral meetings at the Ministry of Labor and at the Industrial Court doesn't support the statement that there's a greater need for education.
Mr. Brown, let me put a question directly to you, and it's in reference to what you've just made mention of. It's a question also I put to several trade union leaders over the past several months that I've been talking with them collectively and individually. Do you believe that there is a conspiracy to destabilize, weaken, and ultimately destroy trade unions in Trinidad and Tobago? And I say that against the backdrop that after decades of struggle, we still have many archaic labor laws, which some of your own colleagues have described as anti-worker legislation, not being updated to meet new and emerging realities in the workplace.
A conspiracy implies that there's some obscure hidden measure being taken place, being contemplated somewhere. It's not a conspiracy. It's an all-out attack. It's an all-out attack when you understand that you have people who have financial resources to dismiss a worker and based on the depth of their pocket, calculate or fairly well calculate what the damages may be in court, understanding fully well that the system will only allow those damages to be paid 2 or 3 years after the fact, after the damage is done. And they go ahead and they do it anyway. The industrial court has existed since 1972.
Yes.
It's my personal opinion that there's sufficient jurisprudence there on unfair dismissals, constructive dismissals, job abandonment, suspensions unnecessarily overdue suspensions. There's sufficient jurisprudence there to guide workers. Even this matter with Republic Bank and this industrial relations offense that they have committed. We have had to file over 10 industrial relations offenses against the bank over the past decade. As simple things as there's a manager there by the name of Andre Sinclair. And we have to ask him repeatedly for information, over and over and over and over for the same information. How many workers have had to suffer no pay leave since March of 2020, resulting from COVID-19? And up to now, he can't give us the information. If I want that information from him, I have to go and file an industrial relations offense and force him to do it because he's not doing it. He's not responding to the union. The good faith isn't there. So you really have to consider what it is the jurisprudence is telling us, and ask yourself the question, why aren't employers following it? And my personal opinion is that the punitive measures the court takes, the damages, the cost of it, they have insufficient consequence. So if the union is successful with the industrial relations offense against Republic Bank, the charges, do you know what the charge is by chance? It's $4,000.
Okay, minuscule. Yeah, minuscule. Yes.
That is not going to come up in any board of director meeting for somebody in a position to say, but how could we have lost this money? How could we do this? Who is responsible for this? All right? And therefore change how it is the bank does business with the union, how it conducts itself with the union. The bank could pay that 400 times because it just declared just declared $1 billion profit in the third quarter, right? A 33% increase over last year. So their pockets are deep and they could afford to do that over and over and over. When you do that, Remember, these industrial relations offenses, they affect human beings, they affect
Mm-hmm.
workers.
Yes.
And over a period of time, what you find, Stephen, is that people will have to consider how effective unions are, because yes, the unions are fighting,
Yes.
but we simply don't have the resources
Mm-hmm.
in this particular system where people can repeat offenses over and over and over.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that point there, Mr. Brown, and it brings me to this question as well. We're looking at what decades of struggle. Going back to the 1930s, the Butler era. We remember, such incidents such as the water riots, and we can come right up, to through the
Yeah.
decades. I think that what some people are saying, in terms of the labor movement, is that and it's one of the criticisms that's placed at your doorstep, probably the labor movement should have been a little more proactive in terms of treating with some of these issues that we are facing now in 2021. As I said, we still have these archaic laws, and you've had decades of struggle. How do you respond to that?
And you have the Movement for Social Justice with Brother David Abdullah,
Yes.
all right, formerly from the OWTU, who has been in politics, and MSG has been in politics for quite some time, right? But you see, notwithstanding the great following Comrade Abdullah had in terms of OWTU, when you look at the relative struggles that he's been having and challenges he's been having compared to the other two mainstream parties, you understand and you see the manifestation of what I speak.
All right. Okay, and you're listening to and viewing the Citizens Community Forum. I'm Stephen Cummings. I have with me Mr. Jason Brown, second Vice President of the Banking and Insurance General Workers Union. Our topic this evening, job security, employer-worker relations now and post-pandemic. Mr. Brown, we unfortunately just have just a few minutes before we end the first half hour of our program for this evening, but I don't want to let you go without, putting in. I have two more questions I wanted to pose to you before we close. And the first has to do with, of course, we've just celebrated independence, and looking back at the trade union movement. And you, as a matter of fact, your struggle started pre-independence. Where would you like to see the trade union movement and labor in, let's say, the post-pandemic era?
I would like to see is, if it is, we could weave over and strengthen that fabric and get back what it is we had in the 70s, because that is the cauldron that would have birthed the trade union, and we were stronger than ever then.
All right. Now, my final question to you, Mr. Brown, and I'd also entertain your closing remarks as well. I'm not sure if we can do that in 60 seconds or a minute or so. Usually when we have these discussions, it's we really need more time. But just in the closing moments of the program, the issue of privatization has been one that continues to worry the trade union movement, and labor leaders, and so I've seen it over and over again, where they react whenever you talk about privatization, especially in state enterprises. Is that do you see us as benefiting from privatization in terms of, because there's also the discussion that when you privatize a certain types of operations, you get more efficiency, there's a increase in level and productivity and what have you. And I wanted to sort of if we can just close off on that point, your view on the issue of privatization, and your closing remarks.
Well, fortunately, I was a past member of the last National Productivity Council. And this issue of productivity is bandied about and abused and corrupted in all sorts of conversations for all sorts of agendas, one of them being privatization. When it is you sell out the resources of our country and you take it away from the people who own those resources and you put it into private hands, then over a period of time, what you do is you pauperize our people and you pauperize our nation. Okay, so that given the time, that's all I can say about that. If I am allowed closing remarks,
yes, please give us some closing remarks. Yes,
it would be to workers who are not in a union, and even those who are in a union, that I would ask you to trust your instincts. When it is you're on the job, and instinctively you feel something is wrong and you are treated unfairly, 9.9 times out of 10, you are right. You may not know the words, you may not know the exact law that has been broken, you may not know what part of the Industrial Relations Act has been breached, but instinctively, workers in Trinidad and Tobago know when it is they have suffered an injustice. And we have to take that next step forward and stand up for yourself, because if it is, we continue to let these small injustices pass, worker by worker, transgression by transgression, that is where we begin to lose ground. And one day we will be looking back and wondering, where has the trade union movement and the working class population gone to?
All right. Mr. Brown, I really wish, we had more time, but I suppose, we can always pick up the discussion at a further, at a further time when we have, when we are allowed, some extra time. But I want to thank you so much for sitting in with us in the first half hour of the Citizens Community Forum. It has been a pleasure.
Same here. Thank you very much.
Mr. Jason Brown there, our second Vice President of the Banking, Insurance and General Workers Union, talking with us there on the topic job security, employer-worker relations now and post-pandemic. And coming up in the second half hour, we are also going to be speaking with members of the ECA, and that's the Employers Consultative Association. We would have with us Mr. Keaton Nancoo, and he's the chairman, as well as Mr. Stephanie Fingal, CEO of the ECA. And it's really an interview that we did earlier on, and we thought it was important to also revisit that interview on the very same topic: job security, employer-worker relations now and post-pandemic. So when we come back, we will revisit that interview.
Join our 1-hour current affairs program, the Citizens Community Forum. Topics are wide-ranging and echoes opinions and voices of our society. Whether it be leadership, governance, health, crime, politics, or social issues, we can all have a civil and constructive discussion inside the Citizens Community Forum every Wednesday from 8 to 9 p.m. on Isaac 98.1 FM with Stephen Cummings.
Last week when I heard that there were 16 children sleeping in the cell in a police station, that was something that was unacceptable to me.
The current constitution of the Public Services Association, there have been concerns about how the constitution...
If you are restructuring the PSA, the only way you can restructure the PSA is through constitutional reform.
If the minister does not accede our request and revalidate his license, we'll have to be heading to court.
Every Wednesday, 8 to 9 p.m., the Citizens Community Forum. Your host, Stephen Cummings.
Because back to your point that the topic, job security, we need to create a circular flow. So in order to have job security, we need people to be vaccinated so that the workplace, the workplace, an opening of the economy and so on by ensuring that people are vaccinated and so on. That circular flow of money is going to contribute in one way or in many ways to job security.
Yes.
Okay.
I take that as your closing. Ms. Fingal, your closing remarks.
Yes. So I just wanted to add to what Mr. Nancoo said, in that we have started utilizing an e-learning platform developed with the ILO. So we did that last year in the midst of the pandemic, and that's what we are using now for our Industrial Relations Academy. And we hope that academy becomes ready. It's EduQual, an international accredited organization. So there's a certificate coming from EduQual for our programs. Okay. And we really hope, I mentioned earlier, we think that there is a gap in the learning and understanding and the way IR is done. And we are hoping to really, have so many more persons come and learn as so that that gap is filled, that we don't have a mire of unskilled people, because we need industrial relations will not go away. We need that.
Yes.
The other thing is that we are going to be engaging in a business resilience training, which we believe we did something last year in business continuity. But one of the key things about businesses and for job security is for a business to be resilient.
Yes, indeed.
And we are going to be focusing not just on the industrial relations, but soon to come on business resilience. If we get our members with resilient businesses and understanding how to stay resilient, we will be able to help secure jobs, to maintain profitability for our members, and really help the economy of Trinidad and Tobago and the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And that's really our end objective. Whatever we do, it doesn't end with the association, but it goes for the benefit of the entire country.
All right.
And you know, Stephen, permit me, if you'd permit me, you know, the listeners to your program, and I have no doubt from participating here this evening, I mean, it's so enriching and rewarding,
yes,
you know, that your listeners, they can, in fact, the ECA, I mean, is proven and tested. The quality of work that we do,
yes,
you know, is proven and tested. So that I'm saying that to make the point that should there be, you know, feel free, you know, go on our website, call us, you know, we are the professionals, the true professionals in industrial relations. We live it and we do it.
I'm sure that you know, our listeners and our viewers would take you up on that, Mr. Nancoo. Mr. Nancoo, Mrs. Fingal, thank you so much for taking the time to sit with us inside the Citizens Community Forum. It has really been a pleasure, enlightening, informative, engaging, educational, in so many different respects. And I get the sense that we may have to continue the discussion at a future time.
Please, please, tomorrow if you wish.
Again, thank you both for joining us on the Citizens Community Forum, and we certainly will be talking with you again. Thanks.
Yeah, it's indeed our pleasure.
Thank you very much, Stephen.
It's been really our pleasure.
And that's it for the Citizens Community Forum for this evening. I'm Stephen Cummings. Our topic this evening: job security, employer-worker relations, now and post-pandemic. And we'd like to thank all of our guests who sat in with us this evening. First, Mr. Jason Brown from the Banking, Insurance and General Workers Union, and an earlier interview that we did with the Employers Consultative Association, Mr. Keaton Nancoo and Ms. Stephanie Fingal. So that's it for this evening. Until another program, I'm Stephen Cummings. See you next Wednesday. It was a famous poet who once said, "They came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for the communists, and I did not speak out because I was not a communist. And then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me." Words there from famous poet Martin Niemöller, 1892 to 1984. And welcome back to the Citizens